One of the most extravagant claims made for the port of Southampton in World War II is that it was at the start of the Second Front. Most historians would agree that the Second Front marked the beginning of the end of the Second World War, which would give the location a worldwide historical significance. However, the Second Front was only possible when the enemy declared war on the United States. Even so, their course of action was not certain. A key discussion at the Tehran Conference in 1943 between U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt, Prime Minister Winston Churchill, and Soviet Premier Joseph Stalin was where the United States would join the war. After all, they were attacked at Pearl Harbor, which would tend to suggest that the Pacific Theater would be the most likely location. It was Hitler's decision to join Japan and declare war on the United States that convinced President Roosevelt that Germany was the more immediate threat. The first stage was Operation Bolero, the code name of the United States military troop buildup in the United Kingdom in preparation for the cross-channel invasion. The high rate of troop shipments created no particular difficulty in the winter months, except for the problem of providing adequate accommodations. Shipments from November through April averaged almost 160,000 men per month, and reached a peak of 216,700 arrivals in the month of April. Movement through the UK's southern base section was affected by Transportation Corps personnel at the various echelons of command. On the basis of daily movement tables, the Regional Transportation Officer, Southern Base Section, issued road and rail instructions for the movement of units from concentration areas into marshalling areas. The appropriate port commander was responsible for the loading of troops and vehicles at the piers and hards. Actual loadings at the hards were handled by Transportation Corps embarkation staff officers, in conjunction with naval hardmasters. But how can we be sure they received their instructions from Southampton? In the first place, we have the record of Staff Sergeant Erwin Swerdlow writing for the U.S. Army Transportation Journal, Volume 1, from October, 1945. He describes how, early in May, a month before D-Day, Southampton and its litter of subports became the focus in the preparation for the great outbound movement to the continent. These subports, operated by the 14th Port with headquarters at Southampton, included Portland, Weymouth, Truro, Plymouth, Falmouth, Dartmouth, Hale, Totnes, Hamble, and Poole. Erwin Swerdlow was drafted into the United States Army and participated in the liberation of Paris in 1944. After earning a Ph.D. from Harvard, he taught English at Dillard and Dartmouth colleges. He mentions that the headquarters were at Southampton, but once again, how can we be sure? We are fortunate to still have a plaque outside the former Polygon Hotel in Southampton which reads, "In commemoration of the officers of the 14th Major Port, U.S. Army who were quartered here during World War II. Upon them fell the responsibility for planning and directing the movement of the United States Expeditionary Forces through the port of Southampton." So we can be pretty certain from the evidence of this plaque that Southampton was involved in the build-up and movement of U.S. forces during D-Day and Operation Overlord. However, the real clincher is the plaque above the actual rooms in the Civic Center Art Gallery where the officers planned and directed the American forces. Presented by the 14th Major Port U.S. Army in acknowledgement of the generosity of the borough of Southampton, which during the mayoralty of Rex Stranger gratuitously provided the section of the Civic Center for use as headquarters for the port. It was from here that orders emanated directing the movement of the vast American armies through Southampton and other South Coast ports between June 1944 and the end of hostilities in the Great War for the liberation of Europe. In historical terms, it is not often that an exact location can be given for such a monumental event, but this plaque connects the extract from Staff Sergeant Swerdlow to the plaque dedicated to the officers who planned and directed American forces. There is one more plaque outside which summarizes the logistical challenge faced by those based at the Civic Center. This tablet records that a wing of the Civic Center was used as headquarters by the 14th Major Port U.S. Army during World War II. Between D-Day, June 6 and the end of hostilities, orders were issued from here directing the embarkation of American armies who together with their allies sailed from Southampton docks to liberate Europe. During the operation, over 2,250,000 troops, 250,000 vehicles and millions of tons of supplies of the U.S. Army were shipped through this port. Given the worldwide historical significance of this location, it is amazing that Southampton City Council ignored their responsibility to protect the art gallery rooms as they are Grade II listed, but instead they are undergoing redevelopment to accommodate more fine art.